Good afternoon, all. We're going to get started. We'll give everybody about 2 more minutes. Thank you for joining us today. We'll give it 2 more minutes and we'll get going. Okay, let's get started. Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today, and we really appreciate it. So this is our 3rd webinar. First one was a Q&A and tips and tricks on how to work from home safely. The last one prior to this was about collaboration, specifically around Microsoft Teams or Zoom. We did have some email delivery issues with some of them that we found out they were going to spam or other pieces. If you didn't get them, please email us back and we have the recordings of them and we can send them to you. Today, we're going to discuss a more permanent solution, a enhanced work from home, enhanced cloud solution that enables you to work from home when you're back in your office. So one of the partners who was going to join us was Nerdio, Tony from Nerdio. Unfortunately, at this point, he seems to be tied up on another call, so we're going to move forward without him. We all, probably most of us don't know the name Azure. That's Microsoft's cloud. If we're in Office 365 and we have our email there, which most of you do, then you're in Azure at this point. The cloud basically means not in my office, it's hosted in somebody else's data center, and Azure is the fabric of Microsoft's cloud at this point. So that is really where it's at. So we've been working with Microsoft on Windows Virtual Desktop, which is the enhanced work from home solution that we're talking about today. We've been talking about this for 1.5 years with Microsoft. They've had it in beta, which means they've been testing it. They came out with it in the fall. Still wasn't quite ready that we were ready to discuss or deploy it early in the fall. Around December, it really became prime time. We have now installed for a few clients with it. And as the situation with COVID-19, the unfortunate, we think it's a very viable option to at least be talking to you about what the solution is. We're going to go through giving you some ideas of Microsoft's technology behind it, some of their data centers, and then we're going to give you a demo at the end of what the solution looks like. So Microsoft basically has spent billions and billions of dollars and has a highly secure monitoring network that they have expanded across the globe, that basically all these points are different points that they have connection points to data centers that they've interconnected with everything on the internet. And these are the connection points to their data centers. So you'll see here, these are the locations of the data centers around the world. They build them as close to their customers as possible. For instance, there's 2 data centers on the East Coast in Virginia, some in the central part of the United States. There's some on the West Coast of the United States. There's some in the southern portion. There's data centers in Europe. If there's enough use in Alaska, they'll actually put one up there at that point. Right now, they have 58 data centers, which is more than Amazon, which is a big cloud provider, of Google combined at this point. So Tony has actually been able to join the call, and I'm going to actually let him kind of take on some of these pieces further, if you'd be so kind, Tony.
Sure.
So thank you very much. want to make a quick intro of yourself, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah, so my name is Tony from Nerdio. We partner with Microsoft to help enable customers to use Windows Virtual Desktop, which has been a very hot topic in the last couple of weeks. We've been able to kind of enable, over 1 million WVD users around the world in a month. So that's, sort of the biggest month we've ever had in history. But yeah, so what you're seeing here is, like Michael said, it's 58 Azure regions around the world. They place them strategically where the customers end up being. Michael, I don't have access to control your slide, right?
No, I'll just move it when you tell me you're ready.
Yep. So let's move on. And what's interesting about these, locations is that they're actually interconnected to each other via actual fiber strands, right? So there's actually a big ship with, millions of miles of fiber that kind of get rolled up into a big ball, and they drop them in the middle of the ocean. And the reason why they do this is, if you know science, like nothing travels faster than light, right? So literally they send light beams across these glass fiber strands or underneath the water. They kind of transfer petabytes and petabytes per file per second, allowing you to access data across the world at lightning speed. So you can see a guy kind of dragging these fiber cables across the ocean. And so Microsoft's actually doing a lot of work to kind of lower the cost of this and bring the cost savings to the end customer, which is you guys. And they're trying all different types of tactics, right? So right now we're sort of in generation 5 of these data centers. And if you asked Microsoft a couple of years ago what kind of industry they were in, they would joke and they would say to you, they're in the HVAC industry, right? Because it would cost an inordinate amount of money to kind of cool and cool and make sure these machines kind of don't break, right? So the cooling and all that's very important. And then with research, they actually found out that machines don't actually run optimally at the 65 or 70 degrees that your typical IT closet kind of you try to maintain the temperature at the very cool temperature. It actually runs best, surprisingly at like 95 degrees. So what they started doing was lowering the cost of HVAC and not even cooling these data centers down. In this picture here, you actually see what they're testing out, which is sort of generation 6 of these data centers. They're pulling all these data centers inside of these circular tube, and in the next slide, you're going to see that these tubes are actually being used to dunk them into the ocean, right? So here you see in North France, they're taking these data centers in these circular pods, and they're using ocean water to kind of cool these data centers, and the result is, again, driving costs down to pass on the savings to you guys. All right, next slide. And this is just a list of some of the compliancy portfolio that Azure has, right? Azure works with governments all across the world, all industries around the world, and they have every single compliance known to man. Azure has it all. And this is just kind of a quick list of industry-specific compliance versus regional versus some of the ones that are global. So, a quick list of all of them. So the important ones. Sure, go ahead.
So some of the ones that are applicable to our customer base are PCI, HIPAA,
maybe, yeah.
SOX, ISO, some of the ISO compliances. So all those fit all the check boxes.
Yep. All right. And Microsoft, when I demonstrate this to people, Microsoft definitely wants me to include this slide, and the reason is, if these Fortune 500 companies are using it, it's good enough for most other people, right? So 95% of Fortune 500s have some kind of infrastructure or something running in Microsoft Azure. And I don't know, Michael talked about it before, but if you're already a customer of Office 365, whether you knew it or not, your data is already in Azure's data centers.
We did go over that.
Yep.
So
cool.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. And then so why the cloud, right? So obviously cloud, is secure. There's flexibility, right? You can turn things on and off. There's scalability overnight, like we've seen in this sort of pandemic, where Microsoft actually grew its cloud actually 775% in a week, with everybody trying to turn Microsoft Teams on and using virtual desktops in the cloud. So, the cloud doesn't have a limited capability, but it's so far held up good enough where, even seeing an increase of 775% within a week, they're able to kind of handle that scale. And then elasticity is great, right? So all these people spinning up these virtual desktops in the cloud, well, after COVID-19 kind of subsides, and obviously we don't know when that is, but when it does, some portion of customers might go back and say, hey, I'm just going to go back to the way I've been doing things. So elasticity is a great thing, right? So I can spin up use it when I want, and then at the end of the day, if I don't want it anymore, I can spin it back down, right? So we know there's a good portion of customers that will, get a taste of working remotely and say, hey, this isn't so bad. I'm very productive. Let me continue using and working from home, right? So there's a good portion of customers might stick and use these virtual desktops pretty permanently after this.
And I want to add to that point, we have clients that are using this, that have it in their office. They're using this solution while they were working in their office. And when they went home, they were able to just basically log on with their laptop or their desktop and have the same experience they had in their office. So it's not just an enhanced work from home solution, it's an enhanced solution that basically allows from any device, any place to access your applications.
And that's funny, right? Because when we were out there talking to customers about Windows Virtual Desktop, obviously before this pandemic, we never dubbed it as a work from home solution, but now it kind of became that. It was never meant for that. Do you want to jump in this one, or Michael?
I'll jump in this one. So today, currently, a lot of you we have, which was appropriate because the solutions, there wasn't a scalable, cost-effective solution until recently with this. So it's really new in this COVID-19 situation. So right now we have, a lot of you have servers in your office that need to be refreshed every few years. We need to upgrade the Windows licensing. We need to make sure the network infrastructure is still going to need to be there when you come back to your office. So we're going to still need firewalls, we'll still need switches, we'll still need all that infrastructure. And desktops, laptops, we still need, because in order to be able to do video conferencing, other collaboration like we're doing, those need to happen. However, the load on those and the complexity of the software reduces once you go to something like Windows Virtual Desktop, because all those applications are now installed in the cloud. And it becomes easier to manage. We no longer have the situation with you where we have to manage the servers in that office, and we have to make sure that they're up and running, or we have to make sure the air conditioning is working. Few clients that we've done this for, we don't have the same cooling requirements, we don't have the same cooling needs, we don't have the same footprint of equipment. Yes, we have switches, we have routers, which some of you don't. We have basically some basic infrastructure to connect you to the internet, connect your wireless, but we don't have all the other infrastructure. So this is what your closet looks like today. And I think probably the representation on that is, if you look in the middle picture, your office will probably still look like that middle picture where you have some network switches and other stuff. If you look at the picture all the way on the right, we've had clients that have had that we moved to the cloud, and all that disappears. Basically, you need connections to your desktops, you need connections to the office printers, you need that infrastructure, but you don't necessarily need all the equipment in the office, like on the picture on the left in the IT closet. And then with all this, you can connect the devices. We actually have a client right now who is working basically off his iPad full-time, doesn't have a desktop at home, doesn't have a laptop, and he's working in a virtual environment completely on his iPad. So as we know, some of these things are things that we're dealing with right now. We don't have fire and flood, but we have a pandemic. And so we're all using our equipment. We're all making sure the equipment's working in the office. We're all making sure everything's working, and honestly, do it for the safety and well-being of the ITS team and other stuff. We're not going on site, so we're doing our best to keep that up. So that's where we kind of came to this point again, looking back, that said, what is the next steps that we should talk about? Should we talk about a solution that removes that out of the office, as we're looking at, as we do not have a finite time when this unforeseen circumstance will end. So this basically ties into Microsoft Azure, as Tony was saying. When we're looking, if we're using Azure and we're looking up our documents or we're getting to our files, they're all in Azure already. People just didn't understand that. They just knew they were in Office 365. And kind of these are the devices that everything can connect from your phone, to your tablets, to other screens, to multiple devices along the way. And I'm going to now stop sharing this, and I'm actually going to open a demo of Windows Virtual Desktop up right this second. Hang on. I'm going to share my actual screen. Of course, it happens when I'm in the middle of a meeting. Hang on one second. Okay. So you'll see here, here's my Windows Virtual Desktop client.
Michael, I don't see your screen. Can you share it out?
Sure, absolutely. Tony, can you see my screen now?
I can, yes.
Okay, so this is the Windows Remote Desktop client. Close my Outlook. You'll see here, I'm going to double click on this. It's going to log into basically my remote session. How I can tell is you'll see up here, it says full desktop on the computer. I'm no longer working on my local computer. I'm working in the cloud. I have my Teams settings here. I have my Outlook settings.
Yeah, so I think essentially what, how to differentiate this from sort of the current sort of work from home solutions, right? Right now we're using tools like Log Me In and Go to My PC to kind of actually remote into the PC in the office. In this
Correct.
situation, you're not really remoting into any PC that's sitting in the office. You're remoting into a virtual Windows Virtual Desktop running in the Azure data center. So no matter if you're home or you're in the office in the future with this solution, you're always remoting in, right? And so it really doesn't matter what endpoint device you're using anymore. Doesn't matter if you're logging in from your kid's gaming computer. It doesn't matter. When you log in here, your work environment is 100% going to span across all your monitors. If you have one monitor, it'll span across one monitor. If you have up to 16 monitors, it'll span across 16 monitors and give you your workspace running in Azure from any device and anywhere in the world.
And if you're using an iPad, for instance, you can actually use mouse support now, even with it. So we have people that we've set up with the mouse, and I actually have used it myself. So you've got all the productivity tools and pieces in place. So our office could be shut down, our office could be not working, and we can work from anywhere and log into this to access our applications. So let me bring it back into the PowerPoint. Tony, can you see?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay, so we put a little thing of basically solution, we put a scorecard together, or battle card together, what the differences are between typically having servers on premise, which is having servers in your office, versus a Windows Virtual Desktop environment. As you'll see here, a lot of things we've gone over. If you're having it in your office, you need to buy the server licenses, you need to buy client access licenses, you need to buy remote licenses, you need Office 365 licenses. In the WVD environment, for basic Windows desktop, you just need to buy a instance of Microsoft Azure for the compute, and all the licensing is included in a Microsoft M365 license. So the licensing gets a lot simpler and gets a lot more cost effective. All the equipment's installed in your office and working in your office, as we were just showing and Tony was highlighting. All the data is hosted by Microsoft and spread across their 56 regions. We have servers in your office. They have good backups. However, based on the size of the firms, size of availability, cost restraints, there's limited redundancy. And when I say that, there's power supply redundancies, there's hard drive redundancies, but if the actual equipment were to fail, we have to go to backup and run for the backup and then restore. Whereas in Windows, it's 100% hosted, and they have redundant servers, they have redundant networking, they have redundant power, they have basically everything, and that cost, and they can justify that because that cost is spread across their client base.
Right. So like Microsoft's a $1 trillion company, right? They're putting billions and billions of dollars a year into these data centers. That's not something that any, even large company can really invest in their own infrastructure, right? So if you compare that with what you have on premise, your goods are only as good as what your money can buy. And so when you compare that with a public cloud like Microsoft's Azure, it's uncomparable.
So on the same, and so the hardware needs to be refreshed. Microsoft's taking care of the hardware business, you get out of the hardware business, and they're doing that in the background. The one area that I think the on-premise stuff does, and you still need desktops for, is if you're doing video conferencing, you're doing audio conferencing, you're doing a lot of these type of graphic media, the on-premise still is a better solution. And we have some clients that basically are in CAD and other stuff. And right now we just cannot make the economics work for those type of people. However, they are working on improving that. I know there is a solution coming down the pike for Teams where you'll actually be able to run Teams in WVD, in the Windows Virtual Desktop, and it will actually stream the audio and video to your desktop so you won't have to switch back and forth. I know that's not done. Today, you're using a Windows desktop, you're using a server for remote access, or you're using LogMeIn, which we set you guys up with. This is built for remote access. It's a multi-session made and designed for remote access in its core. And basically, the last piece kind of reiterates that point. Did I miss anything, Tony?
No, and I think it's important to know, LogMeIn and all that stuff. It's great to kind of, pull out of your hat in the midst of all this stuff, but it's sort of like a Band-Aid to this. It's not designed to kind of permanently be used that way for a long time. And this solution, of course, came out right before, this whole pandemic, but it was designed to kind of replace your office equipment and replace all your servers. And if you guys are at a sort of a crossroads between purchasing new hardware for the next 3 to 5 years or going 100% virtual, this is the decision kind of point where you're going to make whether you're going to go to Windows Virtual Desktop or buy another piece of hardware for the next 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
I think that's a good point to make. If we're at it's an inflection point if you're at a point. So
right.
So migration. So we would, we know a lot of the software. We'd still talk to you about the software because sometimes there are pieces we don't know you guys do. We go through how the applications work, what you're accessing, what you need from locally, and make those assessments. Nerdio, Microsoft has tools to help us make this process as seamless and easy as possible. And obviously we need decision makers and we need an action plan. And all this is done. We actually have a migration going right now. In the middle of it, company is up and working and doing all the stuff. And Jay and Brad and our team are actually working on the back end of the migration pieces, and everybody's still logging into the system and working remotely as if nothing's going on. And we will be cutting over pieces one at a time to the cloud and to reduce as much friction as possible. So kind of these are some of the, I think, some of the services that we offer, which is kind of tied to this. As you all know, we provide your IT. We also have made a significant investment in cybersecurity services. We provide your help desk support. We do monitor your servers 24 hours a day. And one of the reasons this came up was desktop and licensing management. Microsoft is changing a lot of their desktop and licensing pieces, making this really important. And the virtual CIO is us meeting with you, talking about decisions like this, talking about your applications. And the backup and disaster recovery solutions are what we've done here with making sure that you guys were able to work via LogMeIn, via VPN, via other solutions, and now coming back and saying, okay, what's next in the situation with everything going on today? If you have any questions, please reach out. If you want to raise your hand and ask anything, I think Jay can, if there's any questions out there, I can raise your hand and we can actually, terrific. So let me turn up, let's see, hang on one second. Okay. And
hey, Gene, go ahead and you got to unmute. There we go.
Yes. Hi, Gene. You can ask anything you want.
How are you? Very, very interesting. I like the whole demonstration. It looks very interesting. And I think my main question here, how easy of a transition is this? I mean, is this, you got to close down the whole operation to redo this whole system here and get rid of the servers? Or it can just be done, something like it gets done overnight?
Jay, you want to answer that because you've done the migrations?
Yeah, sure. It's not as easy as that it's done overnight. However, it is done in that we coordinate when the cutover will be, right? So we're doing that migration in the background. And then we reach a point where we say, okay, we have to stop business for a certain amount of time, scheduling with you that say, like in the case of what your business, we say we would shut down late Saturday or whatever it is. And then over that time period before Monday morning, we would have you up and running again. It all depends upon the business, right? So for what you guys do, it's a little different. For what some other clients in professional services, where it's just files that they work with day in and day out, that migration period is a little shorter. It all depends upon a bunch. There are different factors, but for the most part, it is turn it off one day and the next morning we turn on and you're working in the platform.
Well, for me, because we're closed, we've been closed going on 3 weeks now with this pandemic, and we have no idea when it's going to happen again, that we'll be back in action. I would say this will be a good time since nobody's there at the office, nobody's working, and there's really going to be no downtime.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we could definitely, Michael, we could go ahead and take a look and then schedule a follow-up with you to see how this would work for you.
The other question I have is, I have a whole camera system. How would this?
We'll take that offline and we'll talk about that separately with that. Okay. So I'll reach out to you separately on that.
Right.
So, anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Mike, one more question. What happens in case of a fire? You don't have a server now, so we have nothing to worry of.
You have nothing to worry about. You walk out of you have your people, you have your files, but as far as your infrastructure goes, let's just say fire happens and you can go home, log into your stuff, and you don't have to worry about any of your data or any of your information. So we actually we had a law firm that basically they're downtown. They're on this platform. We have a few other people, but I'll just give this example. They walked out of their office. The biggest thing we got was some inquiries of how do I install the remote desktop piece on my laptop at home. We had one partner in that firm who basically did not have a laptop. He bought a new laptop. We walked him through getting it set up. We installed it, and an hour later, he was working as if nothing happened.
Very good. Very good. All right. Sounds good. Very interesting.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I think Bill raised his hand.
Okay. Good. Okay.
Bill's
Bill?
muted now.
No, Bill's, no, he's allowed to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, this is Bill from Strata, the IT manager here. And I have to say that we have, I would say 90% of our services are in the cloud now at this point, and taken advantage of this even before this disaster struck. We've been doing it for what, a year and a half or maybe 2.5 years or so. And the transition to get out of office during this pandemic was so smooth. There were, of course, like anyone else, a lot of last minute panicky, let's hurry up and get this laptop configured to connect using log me in to be able to remote to their desktop inside the office. But for the most part, all of the services that are required, if it's not a client server app that's installed locally on a local server in-house on site, if it's a cloud-based, like you just walk away and you just fire up your computer at home and you're up and running. And ITS was invaluable to help us during the transition to get through this pandemic. Honestly, they wouldn't have been able to have done it and been up and operational. In fact, it very well, having had gone to this, made the decision to have gone to the cloud years ago, have very well saved our business.
Thank you, Bill. That's very kind words from you. Thank you. Appreciate
I would
it.
highly recommend going to the cloud. A lot of people wonder about security and all, well, is it still going to be secure? You could be rest assured as a public company, having to be SOX compliant and SEC compliant, security measures are definitely in place to make sure that there's encrypted traffic, that you know that your data is secure going back and forth. So if you're concerned about security aspect of it, that can be very well addressed and it can be put to rest, so you don't have to be concerned about somebody hacking into your data over an encrypted line.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Bill. Appreciate it.
Got it.
Anybody else? Well, thank you very much for your time, guys, today. We appreciate it. We're trying to keep these going. And if you guys have other suggestions of things you want to hear, feel free to reach out to us as well, because we're going to try and keep these going once a week, that we're keeping communication and other pieces going. If anybody in your organization, anybody else you know is interested, they can just click on the link and hear this because it's being recorded.
Right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. All right. It was